Driver's license testers. What's the worst thing the kid has done without batting an eye while taking the driving test? Not a tester, but there was a license center next to the sporting goods store I worked at. A lot of people would come there and practice before their test out front in the straight-on parking spots. A young lady who only had her permit managed to mix up the gas and brake and drove right through the front of the license center. I was told later that she was even more upset when they wouldn't let her reschedule her test for the following day since they cancelled her test she was pulling in to take when she wrecked the whole front of the building. It wasn't long after that they installed a bunch of bollards in front to protect the building. I was amazed at how marked up they had gotten in the first few months. Not a tester, but I heard about a girl in driver's ed who was driving on the interstate with the teacher and 3 other students. The teacher commented that they missed the exit, but they would just get off on the next one. I'm not sure what the girl's thought process was, but this girl pulled into the grass and tried to go against the traffic to go back to their missed exit. The teacher had to use her brake on the passenger side while the 3 other students screamed bloody murder. I'm not a tester, but I asked my tester during my full license test what was the worst thing someone had done. Apparently there was an older gentleman who drove through 3 stop signs before the tester told him to pull over. The gentleman explained that he didn't want the license, but his family was pressuring him, so ran the signs on purpose to fail, made sure no cars were coming first. The kids make minor mistakes, and yes, some do make scary mistakes. However, it's the adults that scare me most, especially the seniors who are up for a exam. Probably the worst test I've ever been on was this man in his 90s. I instructed him to turn onto a street when it is safe to do so, and he turned, narrowly missing a pedestrian. Not only that, but he was driving on the wrong side of the road. He came head to head with another car who pulled over to let him go. He was laughing about it because he was under the impression that it was a one-way road. When I got back to the office with him, I cut the test short and got him back in the quickest and safest way possible. He was astounded when I told him it was not a one-way street. Me: did you see any one-way signs? Him: no, but I assumed you were going to take me on one. Huh. Edited for clarity, sorry. When I was sitting my test, I asked the tester how many tests he did in a normal day. His answer was 10, not all that surprising, until he followed it up with 10 and 8 will fail before making it out of the car park. I asked him to elaborate, and apparently the vast majority of test sitters will fail for administrative reasons, like arriving late to the test, not bringing their existing learner's licenses, or having a vehicle that wasn't road legal. The latter was more common than it sounds. When all lights/turn signals/horn etc. are tested in the car park before the test itself begins. Fail any of the above and you've wasted your $75 and never even got into gear. Opposite kind of story here. When I was taking driver's ed, I was in a car that had the brake on the passenger side for the instructor to use just in case. Going 35 down fairly busy street, my car all of a sudden comes to a complete stop. In horror, I look over at my instructor who is sound asleep with his foot on the brake. I just sat there dumbfounded. After a couple people honked real quick, he shook himself awake, mumbled a quick accelerate and sat up adjusting his glasses. So that was fun. Edit: yes, I did pass. Guy was in his 70s and just didn't care about anything. My dad was friends with a guy who worked for the registry giving the road test. His best story was of a kid who took his test while it was raining. He started driving without the windshield wipers on. The guy figured he was nervous, so tried to give him a break, saying, "It's raining pretty hard," but the kid was white-knuckled on the steering wheel and just said, "Yeah," again trying to give the kid a break. He said, "Don't you think you should do something about that?" The kid said, "Yeah." Apparently he didn't know where the wiper controls were, so he rolled down the driver's side window and stuck his head out. At that point he stopped the test and failed him. In my local area, a guy in his mid-20s failed the test for some reason. At this point in time, the results of the test were shared in the car. After being told he failed, he proceeded to get out of the car and grab an axe out of the trunk. I don't know any more details beyond that, but apparently it is why the results are shared inside the licensing building rather than in the car. Okay, 3 stories. My ex drove a geo-tracker tiny car. She pulled right into the parallel parking area and fit in so unbelievably easy. The tester made her do it properly. A girl in my driver's ed failed her test when she went to DMV because she turned into oncoming traffic. Not only was there a grass median, there was some of those skinny red/white poles for about 10 feet followed by a guardrail. Each side of the median was 3 lanes. There really was no way to miss it, but she did. On a lighter note, I did the backing up 100 feet. When the tester told me when, I stopped, and before I put it into park he asked me a few verbal questions, then proceeded to give me directions to leave the area and back to the parking lot where the parallel parking test would be done. Never put the car in drive, pressed the gas, and car went flying in reverse for about 20 feet. He apologized and said my fault for distracting you. As far as I'm concerned, that never happened. Wasn't a kid, my 80-year-old great-aunt. The tester kept telling her to speed up. After a few times she said she can't see the speedometer, so she doesn't know how fast she is going. He made her pull over and she did not receive a renewal, thank God. Edit. LPD. Drive extra careful around pharmacies. It's usually crowded with old people. It's one of the few places they need to drive to. This is actually a very serious problem, at least in America. Your aunt seems to be the odd man out, as plenty of senior citizens have licenses and absolutely should not. But no one wants to take their parents' car away and be responsible for the transportation, and no politician will get elected on the platform of taking old people's licenses away. But it needs to happen. While driving my dad's truck, I stopped at a construction zone with a dude holding the stop sign since there was only one lane open. I looked in the rearview mirror and noticed this silver SUV coming in fast behind me. Watched as they didn't slow down at all, and I just mashed the brake hoping my vehicle would go flying into the construction guys. At the last fucking minute, the driver of the SUV saw what was about to happen and yanked the wheel toward the ditch. Their SUV clipped my dad's truck and flew by through the ditch, which was one of those highly graded, steep fuckers. Older lady got out and we were all fine. A cop came and both vehicles were driving, so we moved a bit up. My dad's truck had a busted taillight and some body damage, but it wasn't a huge deal, just needed a quick repair. Well, I get a call a few weeks later by a guy saying he's the husband of the woman who hit me and tried offering money instead of having it reported against their insurance. She was ticketed as well. I explained it wasn't my truck and my dad lived hours away, so it wasn't really my deal to sort out. That's why people have insurance. Dude just goes asshole mode and tells me that I've ruined his wife's life and now she won't be able to renew her license. Now she won't be able to drive anymore. It was nuts, like it was my fault I was stopped at road construction yielding to their stop sign. She could have easily ran guys over had she not saw my vehicle in her path. My dad did testing for a few years and he once had a girl stop on railroad tracks. There was a train coming slowly, but still it takes them a long time to stop, and it blasted the horn right into the car passenger side with the window open. This just made her freeze up even more. He had to reach his foot over to her side to hit the accelerator. Edit to add. In Canada you can do your driver's test in any car you choose because in theory you should be good enough at driving to not need an instructional car. So this car did not have dual pedals. Kinda the opposite of your question. Actually the worst thing a tester could do. Gets in car a little hatchback, is a huge man and cannot fit. Says he will fail me unless I can get a car he could fit into within 15 minutes, otherwise my slot will be gone and I will have to rebook and pay again. Luckily Dad was 5 minutes away who came with his sedan. Disaster averted, or so I thought. Asks me to do a U-turn on a farm road, single lane each side, with a ditch on either side. Impossible to do based on turning circle of car. I attempted the largest angle possible, but due to ditch each side ends up being a 3-point turn. He asks me if I'm deaf and if I know what a U-turn is. Politely try to explain it's not possible, which I'm sure he knew. Completed the test and passed everything else. Failed me and told me to come back when I learned to drive. Rebooked the next day and passed with a different instructor. This was in 2005. Fast forward 15 years, he is actually in the news and sentenced to jail for accepted bribes. In hindsight, he made a comment of some sort of reparation for not fitting in the car, and it makes sense now. My father used to tell stories of when his dad worked at the Massachusetts registry. One story, and I'll change names because internet, he told, was there was this kid taking the test who was awful, but the kid was really stuck up. Somehow he had gotten my grandfather's name, so after the kid tries to act all slick and pull strings and goes, "I know Chutlefit," my grandfather giving the test says, "Oh really? You know Chutlefit?" Kid's like, "Yeah, no you don't. Because I'm Chutlefit." Kid did not get a license that day. Edit. Heard these stories long time ago. They were told all the time, but now it's been so long I don't remember them well. Thinking about it, the kid may even have claimed to be related to Chutlefit, which makes him even dumber.